Good evening, everyone. It's BaOmer. BaOmer is a special day. It's the day that the Sephira turns from a somber experience to a joyous one. And on BaOmer, there are many things that are commemorated, including the fact that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying from the terrible plague they were experiencing. And one of the other highlights of BaOmer is that it is the anniversary, it is the yahrzeit of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is one of the most important sages mentioned in the Mishnah. In fact, I believe he is the fourth most mentioned sage, often going by the name of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is a student of Rabbi Akiva. He lives in the 2nd century. He is profoundly significant in many areas. He's the author of the Zohar, according to many sources. He's the author of the Mechilta. He is prolific, and he contributes deeply and profoundly to Jewish life, to creating Jewish halacha, Jewish law, and Jewish mysticism today. And so this day, his yahrzeit, has become a day of great celebration. If it were not for the coronavirus, there would be over 300,000 people gathering in Meron by his kever, by his grave, to celebrate his life, to celebrate the contribution he made to our lives. What contribution in specific does he make? There's a story told in the Gemara. It's the famous story that I'm sure you hopefully are hearing many times over the next 24 hours. The story is told, recorded in the Gemara Shabbos Lamed Gimel, I think Side 2, Amud Beis. Story is told that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was being persecuted by the Romans, and him and his son Rabbi Eliezer flee, and they run and they hide in a cave. This is a famous story. And Rav Shimon is in that cave with his son for 12 years. For 12 years he's in hiding. He has no contact with the outside world. For 12 years they are exclusively studying Torah, praying, reflecting on what it means to be connected to God. For 12 years, they are miraculously fed by a carob tree and a stream that springs up inside the cave. This is a supernatural experience. After 12 years, none other than Eliyahu Hanavi comes and tells them it's time to leave the cave. No one else was coming to tell them. They were forgotten. And Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and his son walks out of the cave, and they look at the world 12 years later, and they are shocked. Remember, they're in the north of Israel, and they see people working in the Galilee. They see people working the fields, and they're saying, why are these people wasting their time? What do they have to benefit by working this world? Why aren't they studying Torah? Why aren't they studying the Word of God? And the Talmud says quite dramatically that they burned up the world that they looked at. The Torah says that anything that they looked at, any field, any produce, any person that they examined working in the world, burned up. So God intervenes. God says, Rav Shimon, Rav Eliezer, you're not ready to come out of this cave. Return to that cave for another year. They go back to that cave and they spend another year in the cave. And they come out, and Rabbi Eliezer is even more intense about his distaste for the habits of humanity. And he's burning up everything wherever he sees it. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai has acquired a new skill, the skill of healing. And he repairs the damage of his son. And the Gemara says he looks at his son and he says, you know what I learned over the course of the last year? I learned that you and I are enough for the world. So what's going on? Why were they burning the world up with their eyes? And then when they come out, Rav Shimon all of a sudden knows how to heal the world. You see, they learn to look at the world in a very black and white way. In their isolation, in their complete and committed focus, exclusive focus to God, They only see that which is black and white. And so when they come out after 12 years, anything that is not exclusive in its focus to God is treif. And they burn it up. A year later, they come out. And Rabbi Eliezer doubles down. He doubles down on that perspective. And he starts burning up anything that's treif. What does Rav Shimon Bar Yochai say? Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says, live and let live. We're enough for the world. We can provide what the world needs. They don't need to know that God exists. And they move on with their life. That's not a very satisfying end to the story. And the Talmud doesn't stop there. The Talmud tells us that Rav Shimon and Rabbi Eliezer are walking along one Erev Shabbos. And they see a man carrying 2 hadassim. One in one hand and one in the other. And they stop and they say to this man, what are those hadassim for? And he says, they're for Shabbos. They're to make my house smell nice for Shabbos. And they say to him, but why 2? Why do you have 2? And he says, one is Keneged Shamar, and one is Keneged Zachar. Each one is supposed to recognize different perspectives of Shabbat, that we have to actively engage in remembering Shabbat, and we have to actively engage in protecting Shabbat. And now Rav Shimon Bar Yochai stops. And he says, Kama chavivin mitzvos al Yisrael. Look, son. Look how precious the mitzvos are for the Jewish people. You see, the second stage, when Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is healing, when he says, we are enough for the world, what is he missing still? Engaging with the world. He's missing the opportunity to talk to someone else, to hear their perspective, to understand how in the context of their work, in the context of their life, they're still deeply connecting with God. They were judging the world they saw. They were not judging the world they engaged with. All it took was one simple conversation with another Jew to understand how good and how godly the Jewish people are. For 12 years, they're isolated. For 12 years, they're disengaged from their fellow Jews, and they forget the Pintele Yid. They forget the Jewish soul. They forget what it means to be dedicated and committed and inspired and moved and motivated to be connected to the Almighty. And as they forget to engage with each other, they judge the world and they destroy the world. They separate from the world. And it's only when they have a simple conversation with another Jew do they remember how special the Jewish people are. As we find ourselves in our own caves throughout this isolation, we are reminded over and over again, unlike Rav Shimon and his son, we are reminded over and over again how special our people are, how incredibly generous our people are. It is deeply important to remember and be defined by that Pintele Yid, by the spark of godliness that are within us. Because it's Rav Shimon Bar Yochai who ultimately, on the last day of his life, he says there needs to be an introducing into the world of the Zohar, of Jewish mysticism. Because that is the only way you can understand how extraordinary the Jewish people really are, how giving we are, and how dedicated we are to giving. And so that's the life of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. He learns a tough lesson. In isolation, he learns what it means to be connected to God. And when he comes out, finally, he learns what it means to be connected to each other. I pray that on this day, in which the students of Rabbi Akiva ceased from dying from the plague, we too will come out of our isolation and will have the ability to celebrate together and connect with each other over the beautiful mitzvot, the mitzvah of Shamar and Zachar, the mitzvah of Shabbos, the mitzvah of giving, the opportunity to connect to the Almighty. Lag BaOmer Sameach.